454 Yada Yahowah. Miqra'ey. Invitations? 7. Matzah, unyeasted bread. Being perfected. As we are now aware, the festival feast of unyeasted bread was first observed as the children of Israel were being rescued from Mitsraym, the crucibles of religious and political persecution. Their freedom came during the night, and with their departure imminent, they did not wait for their bread dough to rise. There were precious few hours to spare, and so they focused on preparing their provisions for the journey. On the opposing side, the Egyptians, having been stricken for their continued rebellion, were not interested in receiving another lesson. In the immediate aftermath of Passover, they wanted to be rid of the chosen people. The religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, the authority figures in the place of coercive cruelty where slaves were confined and restricted by political persecution, considered foes, besieged, and assaulted as if shut up inside a concentration camp, were intensely resolute, chazak, were strong-willed and firm, some helpful and others harsh, with the people, al-ha'am, upon the family, hurriedly, mahar, anxiously and quickly, impulsively and impetuously, formally but fearfully, sending them, la shalakhem, dispatching them, out of the region, minha eres. For they said, Kyamar, we will all die, Shirlanaknu moth, every one of us will be put to death 455 prematurely, be executed and separated from the living. Shemoth, Exodus 12:33. So, the people, Ha'am, the family, brought along, Nasa, carried away, their dough, batsik, their grain mixed with water, before it was yeasted, and there was a return of the grievous sorrow of cruel oppression, terem chamesh, in advance of the embittered fungus conceiving the culture of ruthless persecution, having their kneading bowls, misherethem, their breadboards, from Shah, to remain behind, bound up, Zara, wrapped up and confined reminiscent of being bound in dire straits, in, bar. Their garments, Simlahem, their clothing, from Semel, resembling idolatrous worship, and upon, their shoulders, Shokemhem, backs, from Shechem, to rise and get an early start on the day. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:34. The spectre of death can cause even the courageous to panic, which is what occurred in Mitsraym. The people were afraid that they would all be killed by the God who was committed to freeing his children. There was nothing in heaven or on earth that would stop him from obtaining their liberty. The religious and political oppressors were chazak, intensely resolute. With some becoming helpful and the others remaining harsh, they were all firm in their determination to remove the impetus for the plagues they had endured. Yahowah has confirmed what we have come to recognize. By using terem shamesh we know that before the bread was yeasted was indicative of acting before there was a return of the grievous sorrow and cruel oppression as a result of the embittered fungus permeating the culture of ruthless religion. Shamesh drives to the heart of the issue God has been articulating. Yahowah has nothing against yeast, per se. His issue 456 is with what Shamesh represents through its other connotations, ruthless tyranny and subjugation, cruel behavior which embitters, leading to callous repression, merciless conditions, horrific suffering, and sorrow. Cynical and disillusioned people become defiant and harbor animosity against God, which in turn leads to cognitive dissonance, and emotional anguish. When covetous people enter the realm of politics and religion, they tend to become tyrants who prosper by lording over others. It is what Mitsraym represents, which is why leaving the land of political persecution and religious corruption became analogous with the purpose of unyeasted bread. Similarly revealing, the same three Hebrew consonants can be vocalized chamash, which means to devise an unjust plot or plan which leads to the mistreatment of others, plundering them, destroying their land and possessions, while terrorizing and killing them, without any hint of morality. Mitsraym, indeed. The roots of the remaining words also paint the story. Their misheareth, breadboards symbolize not wanting to be Shah, left behind in the realm similar, clothed in semel, idolatrous religious worship. Having Shochem, shouldered the burden of being enslaved, they would Shechem, arise and get an early start on the day. And while they were free and no longer Zara, confined and besieged, by incorporating this words cleverly into the text, Yahowah was making an ominous and yet reassuring prediction. As the time of Yaakov's Zara, Israel's troubles approaches, rest assured that there will be another exodus. While it was inadequate on its own merit following 8 decades of enslavement, Yahowah gave the captors the opportunity to make reparations. When, the children, sons and descendants of Yisrael, individuals who 457 engage and endure with God, had engaged, Asar, had acted at that time and actually done, expending the energy and effort to profit, perfect, in a manner consistent with, in accord with Moshes, the one who draws out, message, ed-Daba, word, statement, communication, conversation, account, speech, and declaration, they asked, they requested, kal imperfect, the religious despots and political tyrants. Mitsraym, the oppressors within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, those responsible for them having endured coercive cruelty as slaves confined and restricted under political persecution, assaulted as if shut up inside a concentration camp. 4. Min, implements and cooking vessels, kali, supplies along with various utensils and useful objects. Silver, kesef, things considered valuable and desirable, objects, kali, articles of various sizes and shapes, possessions, and jewelry, and gold, wazahab, precious metals and money, in addition to clothing, similar, apparel and cloth. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:35. When we engage in a manner consistent with his Torah's guidance, Yahowah will free us from the sting and stain of political persecution and religious oppression. Such is the purpose of Chag Matzah. Beyond being liberated from the wiles of man, we are also enriched by God, given everything we need and desire to live a fulfilling life. These objects were but a token of the riches we will receive. The children of the covenant will be showered with the most wonderful inheritance in the universe as we are adopted into Yah's family. Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, bestowed and granted, Nathan, caused and gave as a gift, producing, kal perfect, for the family, Ha'am, the people, a sense of empathy resulting in a favorable and 458 compassionate disposition, Eth-Chen, some sympathy causing a more merciful and generous reception, in the sight, Bar-Ein, in the eyes and perceptions, of the religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, of the crucibles of despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, the place of coercive cruelty and slavery, of restrictions imposed by political persecution as if shut up inside a concentration camp, such that they let them have what they requested, Washalhem, so that they were given permission to take what they had inquired about and wanted. Therefore, they spared, Natsal, they saved, creating an opportunity for deliverance and more favorable circumstances. Peel imperfect, Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel persecution where people were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and besieged, during a time of testing and tribulation, from to be bound and confined by an adversary, besieged, assaulted, shut up, and enclosed in a concentration camp, by those showing great hostility. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:36. The Natsal, opportunity for deliverance, now known as the Exodus, is a Nathan, gift granted and bestowed by God. It is born out of his sense of Chen, empathy and mercy for his family. Had the children of Yisrael acted upon the Ed-Daba, message of Moses by Shema wa Shama, observing and listening to the Torah, teaching of Yahowah, this is the reception they would have enjoyed throughout history. From this moment to the present day, there would have been no wandering around in the wilderness, no inhospitable reception in the promised land, no Philistines or Palestinians, no Assyrian or Babylonian captivity, no Greek or Roman invasion and resulting subjugation, no diaspora or Holocaust, no anti-Semitic Christian 459 conspiracies nor Islamic terrorism. Moreover, had the children of Israel engaged in harmony with the Torah's guidance, the nations which have suffered for having tormented God's people would have been spared that fate. This extrapolation from the text is made possible by something Yahowah told Abraham at the beginning of their relationship. Remember? Then, I will continually choose to favor and hold in high regard, Abaraka, those who hold you in high regard, who see you as a source of blessings of reconciliation, and of the beneficial relationship, Barakota. But, he who disdains or despises you, even trivializes you, viewing you as someone to be slighted or belittled, Kalalota, I will actually besmirch as disrespectful and may continuously incarcerate as inferior, I will designate as embittered and may forever constrain and condemn as a consequence and penalty, Ara. So, with you, Bar-Otter, shall be commended and blessed, reconciled, and favorably greeted, showered with gifts and prosperity and offered a beneficial relationship, Barak, all of, Shirl, the kindred individuals who are discerning, exercising good judgment regarding the means to resolve disputes, Mishpacha, of the earth, Erez. Bersith, Genesis 12:3. The citizens of Mitsraym, who had made it possible for their leaders to prosper as a result of the slave labor of the Yisraelites, were caused to be sympathetic, showing compassion and favor toward God's people, and that is why they were Natsal, spared. It is a lesson that was lost on the Assyrians, Babylonians, Greeks, Romans, Roman Catholics, Muslims, Nazis, and today's irrational 460 liberals and crazy conspiratorialists, as their journey to the promised land began. The children, of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, set out, picked up, removed themselves, departed, left and traveled, led and guided, from, Min, Ramses, Rameses, Ra is the one who bore him, or the son of the sun. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:37 in part. The inclusion of Ramesses in this passage, as well as in 3 others, initially led many historians and theologians to discount the Exodus account, categorizing it as fable rather than history. And that is because the Torah places the Exodus between 1440 and 1450 BCE, and likely in 1447 BCE according to the Torah's internal chronologies. However, Ramesses the Great did not ascend to the throne of the Black Land until 1279 BC using the conventional chronology, a gap of 160 years. Based upon the new chronology, Ramesses ruled in the early 10th century. However, synchronism is immaterial at this juncture, because Ramesses was just the name of a place, in this case the location from which the Exodus began. So, while the Torah lists the names of countless other potentates, it never actually reveals the name of the pharaoh of the oppression because his name is irrelevant. It is only the arrogant and oppressive religious and political culture of Mitsraym, from which we have been saved, that is pertinent. That is not to say that we should not be curious, or that we should not try to verify the Torah's veracity by investigating the history of the Black Land. And that is why in the 2nd chapter of Volume 4 of Yada Yahowah, Shalach Ameni, relying upon the work of archaeologists and historians, we determined that, based upon the cartouches carried with them into the Promised Land and 461 unearthed upon Mount Ebal, combined with the most universally accepted chronology, Thutmose III was pharaoh, and it was his firstborn son, Amenemhat, who perished. We are now aware that overwhelming and irrefutable archeological evidence has been unearthed at the dig at Tel ed-Daba to prove that Israel's sojourn began in Ramesses, a place named after Ra, the Egyptian god. The pharaohs who bore this name were claiming dependency from the sun god. What is particularly significant in this regard is that Yahowah provided us with a phonetically accurate rendering of Ramesses some 3,300 years before the 1799 CE discovery of the Rosetta Stone enabled historians to pronounce the moniker of Egypt's principal god. It is one of many confirmations that the Torah can be trusted. The Lower Kingdom metropolis of Ramesses, which was once known as Avaris, was occupied from the 12th to the 20th Egyptian dynasties. At its peak, Avaris, Ramesses was one of the largest cities of the ancient world, covering some 10 square kilometers. It reached a zenith in the 15th century BCE as a result of the Hebrew slave population. It fell into lean times following the plagues and in the aftermath of the Exodus, only to be rebuilt again by Ramesses the Great centuries later. Returning to Yahowah's message, we find that the Yisraelites left the realm of the son to go to Sukkoth, temporary dwelling or encampment, from Sukkah and Sakak, to shelter and protect, to pitch a tent and camp out, and to cover, with approximately, with about, 600,000, Sheshmia Elif, able individuals, Geber, capable and strong people, while Geber is masculine it is used to describe adult humans who have the strength to prevail and is not limited to males, on foot, ragli, besides, Labad minimum 462, in addition to, little children, tap, infant boys and girls who take quick little steps. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:37. Sukkoth is a variation of Sukkah, which serves as the name of Yahowah's 7th and final Miqra, the festival which celebrates mankind camping out with God in the Promised Land. This tells us that the pathway to paradise which begins with Passover and unyeasted bread leads to Sukkah. Just as Abraham was called out of the political and religious milieu of Babylon before he could walk with God to the Promised Land, the Yisraelites were led out of an equally corrupt realm in which the sun and stars had been considered gods before they were allowed to camp out with Yahowah. As an interesting aside, since Geber can mean men in addition to adept adult individuals, the passage is often rendered as 600,000 men in addition to women and children. However, Geber is a measure of aptitude, not gender. In this case, it was used to convey that there were approximately 600,000 able individuals with a fighting chance to succeed in this journey. Moreover, tap means infants, not women and children. It comes from a root that speaks of quick little steps and of those more likely to trip as a result of being toddlers. Accordingly, it would be mistaken to conclude that there were 600,000 men, even more women, and twice that many children. And while the scars left by hundreds of thousands of refugees walking across the arid landscape of the Sinai Peninsula are still visible from space, there may be more to the number 6 than simply an assessment of population. 6 is the number of man, and it represents the unique animal conceived with a conscience on the 6th creative day. And from God's perspective, these were the most important people on the planet. He would validate his 463 formula of 6 plus 1, of man with God, through them. Until recently, it was considered implausible that there were 600,000 Yisraelite slaves in Egypt, but now the evidence is ubiquitous. Digs in the Upper Nile region, especially the grave sites unearthed in Avaris, demonstrate that hundreds of thousands of Hebrews were enslaved in this region. Satellite photos of the Sinai not only reveal evidence of an ancient migration, but the footsteps also lead to the beach at Nuweiba on the western shore of the Gulf of Aqaba. It is the only place of sufficient size to accommodate this multitude prior to the crossing. Not only is the mountainous route which leads to this area consistent with the Torah's depiction, but there is also a land bridge across the Gulf of Aqaba at this location, replete with remnants of Egyptian chariot wheels encrusted in coral beneath the waves. This gradual grade across the northeastern arm of the Red Sea is suitable for a massive population to cross into Arabia. Moreover, large stone columns, approximately 15 feet tall and 4 feet in diameter based on the pictures, were erected on the eastern and western shores by Solomon, thanking Yahowah for the role he played in freeing the children of Yisrael. They baked, wa'afa, the dough, eth-batsik, grain flour mixed with water, which, Asher, by way of making a connection and leading to the benefits of the relationship, they had brought out, Yatsa, of, men, the crucibles of oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of religious and governmental, military and economic subjugation, the coercions and cruelty experienced in Egypt where the people were confined and restricted by political persecution, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and besieged during a time of testing and tribulation, from Chawah, to be bound and confined by an adversary, besieged, assaulted, shut up, and enclosed in a concentration camp by those showing great hostility, as 464 flat loaves, yuga, quickly prepared flatbread, unyeasted bread, matzah, without the fungus of yeast, thereby uncontentious. Symbolic of removing the fungus of religion, from matzahs, to drain out and remove, because, there was no yeast added, lo chametz, their loaves were not embittered or oppressed, they were not wrongly treated, as, they had been expelled, garish, driven and cast out, banished with all aspects of the prior association completely severed and dissolved, from, Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym. The cauldrons of cruel persecution where the people were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions, and they would not have prevailed, lo yakol, they could not have succeeded or endured, overcome the challenges or accomplished the goal, maintaining their confidence, kal perfect, if they had delayed, la maha, had they lingered, waited, or hesitated, from ma, to question and achar, to be left behind as a result of having vacillated and dithered. Moreover, wagam, they had not done anything to prepare, lo asar, they had not produced, food or provisions, cedar, supplies, for themselves, lahem. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:39. They had left the yeast in a place where they could be free of it. They would no longer be oppressed. There are few things better than garish, having the Mitsraym cast out of us and banished, with all prior associations with religion and politics dissolved. It is only then that we are truly free. God does not want us to hesitate when it comes to his summons. The longer we wait, the more entrenched we become, and the harder it is for us to walk away. Yahowah wants us to capitalize upon this opportunity to come clean before it is too late, before we become too set in our ways 465 or, worse, before we die. Life is short for those who are not properly prepared. Indeed, we have nothing to gain and everything to lose by delaying. God's way is better than man's approach. I cannot list a single thing I have surrendered that was worthwhile and have written 30 books filled with all Yahowah is prepared to offer. The risks associated with hesitating are enormous, so significant, that Yahowah wanted us to know that had the Israelites lingered, they would have remained slaves in Mitsraym. Even in God's presence, even with Moses directing our steps, if we do not act, it is all for naught. While we are responsible for working to support ourselves and our families, the provisions required to reach the promised land are supplied entirely by God. Such is the case with Pesach and Matzah, where father and son worked together to provide the gifts of eternal life, and the perfection of our souls. The Septuagint and the Samaritan Pentateuch include the 3 generations from Abraham to Jacob in the 430-year period depicted in this next verse, Shemoth, Exodus 12:40. The Masoretic text does not. It differs from the Dead Sea Scrolls by eliminating the phrase the realm of which is witnessed in the older manuscript, Forkexed. The time interval of, Wa Moshab, the period endured of abiding within this place for, the children, then, sons and descendants, of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, in which, Asher, they remained, Yashab, they dwelled and inhabited, in, Var, the realm, Ha-Eres, the land and country, from Forkexed of Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel persecution where they were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions. plural of Matsah, besieged, during a time of testing and tribulation, from 466 Chawah, bound and confined by an adversary, assaulted in a concentration camp by those showing great hostility, was 30 years, Shalashim Shana, and 400 years, Wa Arbamia Shana. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:40. Yahowah not only timed the exodus from Egypt to occur on the Miqra of Matsah, on the day following Pesach, but he also provided another confirmation of the pattern he would use throughout the human experience. 40, from Araba, meaning squared, depicts the interval which designates the completion of a time of testing. It matters not if it is 40 days, 40 years, 40 decades, or 3 iterations of 40 Yowbel separating the covenant's inception to the final reconciliation of the family. As it relates to this specific interval of time, some 30 years plus another 400 years, I am going to venture into the Torah's timeline with a degree of trepidation. While the dates I am going to share are easily derived and readily verified, with many even corroborated by things we know to be true, correlating one calendar with another going this far back in time is subject to compounding errors. And in this case, the first 30 years of departure from the Promised Land was in Charan, not Egypt, and it was by one individual, not many. Nonetheless, taking the chronologies presented within the Torah as conveyed by the Masoretic text at face value, Israel's 430-year sojourn in foreign lands begins in 1878 BCE. Disgusted by her eldest son, Esau, deciding to marry 2 Canaanite women, Rebekah positioned Jacob, who would have been 40 at the time, to steal Esau's birthright blessing. Then to avoid retaliation, Jacob, who became Yisrael, the father of the 12 tribes, fled to Charan, beginning the Yisraelite exile from the Promised Land. At this time, Jacob became an indentured servant to Laban, a highly 467 unsavory character, to earn the right to marry his daughter, Rachel. Tricked by the shyster, and given Leah, he would work another 7 years for her younger sister. 30 years thereafter, and following the birth of his 11th son, Joseph, Jacob left Charan for Mitsraym during a prolonged period of drought in 1848 BCE. And while he would return home, his sons sold his son, Joseph, to a Ishmaelite, who parlayed him to Potiphar in Mitsraym in 1841 BCE. His ascension to the Pharaoh's service, whereby he instituted agrarian reforms to stave off a predicted famine, transpired circa 1828 BCE. Thereafter, Joseph's father, Jacob, his brothers, and their families, some 75 individuals in total, entered Mitsraym around 1788 BCE, again fleeing the adverse effects of climate change. They would remain as immigrants, as prosperous and free as caste systems and despots allowed, for some 260 years. However, life would become unbearable for the Ibri Hebrews when they were enslaved under Pharaoh Sobahotep for circa 1529 BCE, largely as a backlash against immigrant populations in the wake of the Hyksos uprising. Moses, who was born at this time, eventually fled Mitsraym in 1487 BCE at age 40 after trying to spare the life of an Ibri slave. He returned with Yahowah to confront Pharaoh Thutmose III in 1447 BCE. The problem with all of this is that for the first 30 years, Jacob was in Charan, not Egypt, and he was a single man for a portion of that time. Second, while Jacob appears to have left Charan for Egypt with his wives and sons in 1848 BCE, explains the reference to 400 years, they did not remain. Further, it was one son, not the children of Yisrael, who re-entered Mitsraym as a slave, initially, in 1841 BCE. And while this date is close, it is 6 years shy of the specified 400 years. Further, it wasn't until 1788 BCE, should the Masoretic text's chronology be accurate, that a contingent of Ibri would enter Mitsraym 468 and remain. But this leaves just 340 years prior to the Exodus. So, there are some anomalies in place or time with 30 plus 400 years presented within the Torah, although we can get close with some interpretation. What we know for certain is that 40 Yowbel, known as Redemptive Years, separate Adam's and Chawah's exodus from the garden and Abraham's confirmation of the covenant with his son, Isaac. Another 40 Yowbel, or 2,000 years, separate this event on Mount Moriah from Daud's fulfillment of the first 4 Miqra'ey on the same site in 33 CE, year 4000 year, providing the means to our immortality, perfection, adoption, enrichment, and empowerment. 40 Yowbel thereafter, in 2033, year 6000 year, father and son will return to reconcile the covenant relationship with Yisrael. This will occur within the lifespan of the generation which witnessed the return of Jews to the Promised Land. These represent the most telling 340s in the human experience. Should there have been a question as to the correlation of 40 the completion of a time of testing, Yahowah lays it to rest with the following. And then, Wah, it came to pass, higher, it came to exist and to be, at, min, from, the completion, K's the finish, limit, duration, and end of 30 years, Shalashim Shana, and 400 years, Wa Arbamia Shana, in, bar, during, this one very substantial, essential, and foundational, Etzem Ha-Yam Ha-Zeh, that which provides the skeletal framework for the empowering, vastly important, and corporeal, day, Yam, it came to be, higher, that everyone, Shirl, who was part of the vast assemblage of individuals following their leader, Zaba, belonging to the multitudes who came forth ready to fight as conscripts to help and serve at the direction of, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher, existence. Came out, Yatsah, from, Min, the 469 realm, Erez, the land and region of religious and political persecution and tyranny, Mitsraym, of the despots and dictators within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, of the authority figures who were coercive and cruel, where slaves were confined and restricted by political oppression, considered foes, besieged, and assaulted as if shut up inside a concentration camp. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:41. Over the course of 30 and 400 years, there are 157,058 days, and yet, there was only one which could be considered etzem, essential. What does this tell us about Yahowah's sense of punctuality, his reliability, and his adherence to a predetermined schedule? If he fulfilled his plan on this specific and calculated day, shouldn't we expect that he will do the same upon his return? Therefore, it stands to reason that this will occur on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations in year 6000 Yah, sunset in Yerushalayim, 6:22 p.m., October 2, 2033. This is the second time Yahowah has used etzem in association with the Miqra of Matsah. As we discovered in our review of Shemoth, Exodus 12:17, etzem denotes the essential nature of a living organism, its skeleton, and the foundation of life and limb. It also conveys the idea of becoming vast and powerful. Our ability to stand with God and endure forever with Him is predicated upon our response to what He did for us on this day. Etzem lies at the heart of how we were constructed as well as how God facilitated our ability to stand with and relate to Him. These passages confirm that even over the course of 4 centuries, Yahowah's sense of timing was directed toward a singular moment, the most essential and substantial day in human history. No, not this day, the 15th of Abib 1447 BCE, but this same day in 33 CE when Chag Matzah was fulfilled by the Zarawah. The Miqra would provide the framework from which the redemption of mankind would be fleshed out. 470 Yes, Passover is vitally important. It is where those who rely upon Father and Son to open the door to life become immortal. But that alone is not sufficient. Our rebellious nature needs to be purged, and the penalty we have earned for our crimes against God and our fellow man needs to be paid. That is the purpose of UnYeasted bread. Our souls, scrubbed and cleansed of Mitsraym, are removed from the crucible of Sheol, hell, from eternal separation from God. We are ransomed on this day because, on it, Daud's soul carried our guilt into Sheol, never to be seen again. He became our Savior, our kinsman redeemer, by paying our penalty. He removed a religious and cultural fungus so that we would be free to answer His Father's summons and serve with Him. What follows is fascinating. Yahowah uses night rather than day to describe the ordeal that is foreshadowed by the invitation to be called out and meat of unyeasted bread. This is because the Messiah's suffering on our behalf intensified at sunset, at the dawn of the Shabat of Matzah. It would be the longest of nights, the time Daud's soul descended into the lightless realm of the crucible of Sheol in our stead to save us from having to go there ourselves. God seems to be predicting that He will be vigilant during the evening of His Son's ordeal on unyeasted bread. And because we are the beneficiaries, to capitalize, we need to acknowledge what our Savior has done in the darkness so that we might bask in His Father's light. It is, Hugh, a night, Lail, a time of darkness and shadow devoid of light, from Lul, to fold back, to be alert while holding an evening vigil, Shimrim, for an evening watch to be on guard through the darkness with the expectation of salvation, from Shema, to be observant, closely examining and carefully considering that which protects and saves lives, to approach, La, to draw near, Yahowah, Yahowah, a transliteration of, our 471 Eloah, God has directed in His Torah, teaching regarding His higher, existence. And for them to come out, La Yatsahem, to go out with them, bringing them out, Hyphil, within the confines of the relationship, God is facilitating their departure and, in the process, making them more like Him. Infinitive, intensifies the action as a verbal noun. And construct, making this act possessive of them, from the land, Mineres of Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel persecution where the people were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and besieged during a time of testing and tribulation, from Ch, to be bound and confined by an adversary. assaulted and shut up in the likes of a concentration camp, by those showing great hostility. It is the night, Hula Leil Hazeh, this is the period away from the light, to be vigilant, closely examining and carefully considering, Shimrim, to be resolutely focused and observant, an evening to watch and be on guard through the darkness with the expectation of salvation, from Shema, to be observant, contemplating that which protects and saves lives, the means to approach, La, drawing near, being concerned about, and regarding moving toward, Yahowah, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his Hayeh, existence and our Shalom, restoration, for, La, on behalf of, all, Shirl, the children, then, of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, throughout their generations, La Dawahem, regarding their offspring, for their households, within their dwelling places, and for all time. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:42. Let it be known, it is on Matsah, not Pesach, that the children of Yisrael left the onerous burdens of religion 472 and politics behind and ventured toward the promised land. And so, it is during Matsah, not Pesach, that we are prepared to approach Yahowah. Therefore, while Pesach is vital, the Miqra of Matsah is far more important. This realization is the opposite of what has transpired in Judaism, where Passover is observed for 7 days and unyeasted bread is ignored. It is also the antithesis of Christianity, where the torturous death of their God is celebrated on Friday but then nothing occurs until Sunday morning, as if Matzah were irrelevant. Methinks, God disagrees. We are being encouraged to observe the Miqra of Matsah. If we want to approach Yahowah with perfected souls, we should closely examine and carefully consider what the Son of God did for us this night. There are 2 essential aspects of Chag Matzah. During the day, we are asked to la Yatzahem, withdraw from the derogatory influence of Mitsraym, oppressive political and religious oppression. While at night, we recognize that Dowd removed our guilt, depositing it in a black hole, never to be seen again. Once the stigma and stain of the culture of man is gone and our souls are perfected by eliminating the darkness associated with the human approach, we are ready to enter our Father's presence. To this end, Yatzah, God's preferred terminology for the Exodus, was written in the infinitive and thus as an intensified and actionable noun. More telling still, it was scribed using the hyphal stem, revealing that it is Yahowah who enables our departure through our relationship with him. God has no interest in or affinity for Egypt, which means that his repeated references to Mitsraym are reiterated to keep us mindful of the conditions from which he is offering to extract his people. As this name implies, 473 Mitsraym was seen as a crucible of religious and political persecution, and economic and military subjugation. It was like every other civilization where the only person who was free to do as he pleased was the dictator, whether the tyrant was called Pharaoh, King, Khan, Tsar, Caesar, General, or Lord. The requisite caste systems assured that everyone else would be controlled, manipulated, deceived, and used by the potentate who claimed his God had bequeathed him with such rights. And to assure compliance, unrelenting toil and torture were the lot of subversives. Moreover, the tyrant was afforded the ability to torment insurgents through his affinity with the religious establishment because the priests were psychopaths, ever ready and always willing to afflict the non-compliant. Mitsraym is the common denominator of every civilization throughout the world. They were characterized by the most ruthless individual rising to power. He would claim God's authority to rule through the integration of government and religion. Then he would impose a repressive caste system to assure that all would serve one. In this manner, Mitsraym became the way of man. It prevailed in imperial Rome and under Roman Catholicism with the imposition of feudalism. It exists today in India and communist China. It is God's desire to free us from mankind's religious and political, economic and military, conspiratorial and cultural schemes. He did so on the 15th of Abib in 1447 BCE and again on the 15th day of Abib in 33 CE. His offer is valid even today, especially as we approach the time of Yaakov's troubles and his Yom Kippurim return. What you and I do with this realization determines the fate of our souls. The crucibles of religious and political oppression in Mitsraym serve as a metaphor for the oppressive and confining nature of Shaul, which is also an exceedingly religious and political place. It is akin to a black hole, a 474 lightless place of separation. Therein, nothing escapes, even for an unlimited duration of time. We should all be cognizant of his plan and Dowd's sacrifice, dazzled by his love, and thrilled by the power of his word. Let's keep this vigil on this night in remembrance and appreciation and be sure to share what we have learned and experiences with all who will listen. The night of unyeasted bread has been presented as a called out and special Shabat, the 15th of Abib each year. During this day and night, Dowd's soul went to the place of separation and darkness to remove the culture of yeast from our souls, so that we could live forever with him. It was the darkest and yet brightest time in all creation. Now that we have been liberated from the consequence of religious and political oppression by what our Savior has done for us on the Miqra of Matsah, our Heavenly Father wants us to joyfully commemorate the victory. In Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:3-4, we find Moses speaking for Yahowah. Then, Moshe, one who draws out, said, Amar, declared and affirmed, 2, El, the family, Am, the people, remember, Zakar, record, recall, and be mindful of, sure to proclaim the truth about, this unique day, Eth ha-Yom ha-Zeh, which, to reveal the benefits of the relationship, Asher, to lead along the correct path to get the most joy out of life, you were brought out, Yatsah, you were removed, from, Min, the realm, Eres, of the religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, of the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, from being under the human authorities in the place of coercive cruelty as slaves, and 475 were confined and restricted by political persecution, considered foes, besieged, and assaulted as if shut up inside a concentration camp, out of, Min, the house, Baith, the household and human family, of slavery, Ebed, of working for others. Of bondage and toil, by way of and with, Kybar, the resolutely and demonstrative, powerful and authoritative, Chazak, firm and unyielding, strong and prevailing, sustaining and encouraging, hand, Yod, ability and influence, of Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, who delivered you, removing you, Yatsah eth Atom, who descended to serve you, to lead you out and take you away, from this, Minzeh, and therefore, do not continue to consume, lower Kal, since we become what we eat do not feed upon, Nephil imperfect, our consumption determines our fate with ongoing implications, yeast, chametz, the fungus within the culture of man which sours, irritates, embitters, grieves, and oppresses. Shemoth, Exodus 13:3. This day, ha-Yom, in, the month, Hadesh, time of renewal, of Abib, ha-Bib, the first month of spring when the barley grain is green and growing, you came forth and were removed, Atom Yatsah. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:4. It should be noted for those who are verifying these translations by way of the Masoretic text, the phrase the realm of is included in the Dead Sea Scrolls before Mitsraym, but the addition of and from the house of bondage is only found in the Masoretic text. This was the one and only time Yahowah intervened forcefully, imposing his will upon his people. God wants us to remember that to reveal the way to receive the benefits of the relationship Yisrael had to be removed from the human family which had enslaved them. He did so Kybar Chazak Yod, with a strong, resolutely firm, and 476 unyielding hand. He would encourage them and sustain them in a most demonstrative manner. And in this case, rather than remove the culture permitting Mitsraym, God withdrew his family from the household of man. The yeast was, thereby, removed from the people as they were taken away from its source. The least we can do is remember what he has done on this day and refrain from corrupting ourselves further at this time. And that is why a kal was scribed in the nephil stem, reminding us that we become what we consume. Garbage in, garbage out. Yatsah, to be brought out is the essence of this story, so much so, the verb was used 3 times in this one statement. Yahowah was and remains anxious to distance us from the wiles of man. The promised land is symbolic of the Garden of Eden, of camping out with our Heavenly Father here on earth and then living with God in his home. Speaking of this desirable destination, Yahowah said, and it will be, when, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, brings you to the land, Bo'ata el Eres of the Canaanite, Ha-Canaanite, the subdued, which, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, he promised, Shabat, he swore he would provide, your fathers, La Abota, to give to you, La Nathan Laata, a land flowing with milk and honey, Erezu Shalab Wadabash. Then you should expend the considerable energy and intensity to serve, Bad, and to labor, doing this work, Eth ha-Boda ha-Joth, by contributing to this ministry, in this month, Hadesh ha-Zeh, during the time of renewal. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:5. 477-7, Shabat, 7, from Shabat, an oath and promise, days, Yom, you should consistently consume, a kal, you should continually eat, kal imperfect, unyeasted bread, matzah, flat bread without the invasive culture of the fungus of yeast. And on, the 7th day, ha-Yom ha-Shabi, celebrate a festival feast, chag, attend the party and enjoy the banquet, to approach, according to and concerning, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:6. By observing the festival feast of unyeasted bread we are prepared to enter the promised land. Once there, we are motivated to work with Yahowah to share his invitation with one and all. Yahowah continues his presentation of the Miqra of Matsah with these words. Matzah, unyeasted bread, Matzah, flatbread devoid of yeast, to become uncontentious by eliminating conflict and dispute, strife and quarrels, symbolic of removing the fungus of religion, from matzahs, to drain out and remove, should be consumed, akal, should be eaten, nephil imperfect, 7, sheba, meaning sworn oath or promise, days, ha-yam. And there shall not be seen, wa-lo-ra, there should not be observed, witnessed, or visible, any yeast among you, la-otaseor, the residual fungus culture in your proximity, in any part of, Bar-Shirl, your territory, Gual-Otter, your boundaries and borders. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:7. This is the third time Yahowah has said that he wants the yeast in our possession lo-ra, out of sight and thus hidden. He does not want us to look back upon where 478 we have been, nor does he want anyone in our presence to see us acting counter to his instructions. As parents, our most essential mission is to introduce our children to Yahowah such that they choose to become his children. Tell, Nagad, conspicuously and in a straightforward manner inform, your children, La Ben Otter, your sons, about this day, Bar Ha-Yam Ha-Hu, saying, La Ma, for the sake of the participants who benefit from this occasion, Bar Biozeh, because of this, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah is guided by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, engaged to do this for me, Asala Eni, performed this service for me to approach, working on my behalf, when, Var, and because, I, Eni, came out and was removed, Yatsah, I was withdrawn, from, men, out of, the crucibles of oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of religious and governmental, military and economic subjugation, the coercions and cruelty experienced in Egypt where the people were confined and controlled by political persecution, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and restricted during a time of testing and tribulation, from to be bound and confined by an adversary. Assaulted and enclosed in a concentration camp, by those showing great hostility. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:8. Once we understand what Mitsraym represents we can make the same claim to our children. Yahowah engaged to do this for me and for you. He has removed the Mitsraym from every child of the covenant. We are all his beneficiaries. While the possibility of being adopted into the covenant family is offered to everyone, it remains personal. Each individual, regardless of status, race, place, age, or time, is afforded the opportunity to answer 479 Yahowah's invitations and act upon his covenant's conditions. We are removed from the crucible, and escaped judgment. And yet, very few people capitalize upon this opportunity. Acceptance is predicated upon coming to know Yahowah and understanding what he is offering and expecting in return. Then we must choose to rely exclusively on him and upon his way. No changes, corruption, concealments, or counterfeits will qualify. Speaking of the benefits of Chag Matzah, God revealed, and it shall exist, Wahaya, on your behalf, La Otter, as, La, an awe-inspiring sign, oath, a symbol designed to communicate an essential truth, for, al, near, before, upon, and concerning, your hand, your influence and actions, your otter, your ability to make a difference, and, Wah, it represents a memorial reminder and commemoration for retrospection, depicting a record worth recalling, La Zikaron, a maxim, proverb, symbol, and inheritance right, for comprehension between, Bayan, to aid in understanding in the midst of, your eyes, ein otter, your perspective and ability to be an observant witness. The purpose is so that, Laman, it is for the intent and reason that, the Torah, teaching and guidance, Torah, instructions and directions, of Yahowah, a transliteration of, our Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher, existence exists, higher, may be, in your mouth and thus in your speech, Bar Peotter. Indeed, because, KY, the powerful, strong, and resolute, Chazak, the mighty, forceful, capable, and unyielding, the courageous, firm, and encouraging, the sustaining consistent, persistent, and confirming, hand 480 Yod, ability and influence, of Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our shalom, restoration, brought you out, removing and delivering you, Yatsah Otter, withdrew you and led you away, from, men. The oppressive nature of religion and politics, Mitsraym, the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, the authority figures engaged in coercive cruelty where lives are controlled, confined, and restricted by political persecution. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:9. This is the day of days. Yahowah has repeatedly conveyed that matzah, unyeasted bread, is a Miqra, invitation to be called out and meet, and a mode, eternal witness to the appointed meeting times. On 2 occasions he revealed that it is kodesh, set apart, the highest designation possible. Twice he has called unyeasted bread etzem, essential. Similarly, he has designated it a chag, festival feast. And now, for the 2nd time, he is referring to matzah as a zikaron, something worth remembering. More explicit even than calling chag matzah Shabbaton, Yahowah referred to its foremost day as Shabat, a celebration of the Shabat, using the actionable form of the word. Thrice, he reaffirmed this association by asking us to celebrate its intent for 7 days. And this is one of the countless times that God has described the purpose of the Miqra of Matsah, affirming that, through it, he is Yatsam in Mitsraym, removing us from the cauldrons of religious and political oppression. The only thing in the whole of the Torah which rises to this level of demarcation and celebration is Yahowah's name. Now that is something worth remembering. The Miqra of Matsah played a pivotal role in the lives of the chosen people, with Yahowah liberating them from the land of Mitsraym. By doing so, unyeasted bread has 481 become an awe-inspiring sign for us and is symbolic of God's willingness to purge the Mitsraym from our lives. In this illustration, our hands, eyes and mouths are metaphors, with God wanting what he did for us on this day to influence our actions, our perspective, and our dialogue with others. Chag matzah is worth remembering and proclaiming. It is one of the Torah's greatest gifts. When pondering how to spend this day, consider Yahowah's advice. Let Yahowah's Torah guide your hands, sharing what we have experienced with others. Let this perspective on this day lead to understanding. And as you observe the Torah, let God's words flow from your mouth. The enactment and the fulfillment of the Miqra of Matsah remain awe-inspiring events within the fabric of history. The invitation to be called out and meat of unyeasted bread is symbolic of being perfected, cleansing us of the diabolical influence of religion and politics, all of which is so eloquently described and predicted in the Torah. This verse also serves as a great example of religion run amok. Orthodox Jews wear phylacteries or tefillin, on the back of their hands, actually strapped from finger to bicep as if a black serpent running up their arms, and on their foreheads, each with Torah snippets contained in them, not understanding that the reference to one's eyes and hand was similar to the mouth. Rabbis go so far as to claim that Shemoth, Exodus 13:9, also Shemoth 13:16 and ed-Daba in 6-8 and 11:18, demonstrates the need for their oral law, and books such as the Babylonian Talmud, because the Torah does not explain how to build their silly boxes, how they should be worn, or even what verses should be contained in them. Desperate is too kind a word. 482. Speaking of a tragic waste of lives, the evening of my previous edit passed through this volume. 45 Orthodox Jews in their mourning clothes and black hats were trampled to death by 100,000 Haredi during their Lag BaOmer religious festival on Mount Meron, some of them children who had ingested the religious poison of their fathers. This, the worst civilian disaster in Israel's modern history, occurred as the Haredi were commemorating the end of a plague which allegedly killed 24,000 of Rabbi Akiba's disciples, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai chief among them. The acclaimed author of the Zohar and father of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, was said to have died on this day, the 33rd in the counting of the Omer in the 2nd century. Orthodox Judaism's reverence for this despicable man inexcusably shortened the lives of his faithful, those who value his words, and those of his mentor, Akiba, over Yahowah's testimony. God gave his people every advantage and opportunity to know him, to serve with him, and to be part of his family. He revealed his word through them and saved them, and yet, this is how they have squandered and rejected his generosity. I have devoted the last 22 years of my life to awakening Yisraelites and Yahweh, calling them back to Yahowah, to Moses, and Daud. And at times like this it is frustrating to see them act so foolishly. I have always known that there is no opportunity to save anyone among the Jews who are Haredi, ultra-Orthodox. Hope is slim for those who are Reform, modern Orthodox, and conservative. Especially among the chosen people, religion remains mankind's most deadly vice. Recognizing this reality, I translate and write for the 40% who are only Jewish by ethnicity and who celebrate their people's traditions, not their religion. They will more willingly consider renouncing the residue of Mitsraym within them. 483 Yahowah wants his people to recognize the essential role the Miqra of Matsah plays in removing his children from religion and politics. He is telling us that it serves as an awe-inspiring sign of what his Son has done for us on this day. The invitation to be called out and meat of unyeasted bread is a memorial worth commemorating. Therefore, closely examine, carefully consider, and observe, Shema, be aware of and focus upon, cling to and revere, actually contemplating at this time, Cal Perfect, this clearly communicated written prescription of what you should do in life to live, eth ha-chukah, this inscription chiseled in stone regarding the process of being cut into the relationship, this engraved invitation to be accepted as part of the whole, drawing near during this eternal witness to the appointed meeting time. Hajoth Lamod, approaching as part of this scheduled appointment memorializing the everlasting testimony, a compound of Mao and Ed, of whom the eternal testimony is about and to whom the everlasting witness pertains, 4, min, days upon days, Yaumim, forever, for an unlimited number of days. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:10. Yes, the mode of Matsah is the day of days. And we observe it by Shema, observing it. How is that for simple and direct, especially since we are told what to closely examine and carefully observe? This is now the second time Yahowah has referred to Chag Matsah as Eth HaChaka, a clearly communicated written prescription of what we should do in this life, if we want to live in the next. Unyeasted bread is Eth HaChaka, an inscription chiseled in stone regarding the process of being cut into the relationship. It serves as an engraved invitation to be accepted as part of the whole, which is to be included in Yahowah's family. This is the day we were liberated and vindicated, 484 withdrawn and acquitted. It is the day that we should make as conspicuous as possible so that it is known to all who wish to live with God. This one day, is for every day thereafter throughout time. God does not change his mind, he isn't capricious. We can rely upon what he has written. And therein lies the problem of Rabbinic Judaism. Their Talmud, Mishnah, and Zohar supersede the word of God. Their holidays have become more important than God's Chag, his mode, and his Miqra'ey. 100,000 will run to a tomb and ignite bonfires to venerate the long-deceased author of the Talmud and Zohar, but will not lift a finger, blink an eye, or say a word on behalf of Yahowah. It is also the problem of the Christian religion. There is no call from pastors or priests to consider Yahowah's summons to observe Passover, unyeasted bread, or firstborn children. There are no sermons predicated upon understanding them. Instead, Christian pastors and priests ask their parishioners to participate in Palm Sunday celebrations, in Maundy Thursday observances, Good Friday services, communion, the Eucharist, and last, but not least, to attend Easter Sunday worship. If God is right, if God can be trusted, they are wrong. And if God is wrong, if God cannot be trusted, neither can they be trusted because they all claim to speak for him. For the Christian church this is a tragic lose-lose scenario. And the wager has been billions of souls. And, it shall come to exist, higher, that when, indeed, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, brings you to, Bo'ota El, the land, Eres, territory, of the Canaanite, Canaan, i.e., the promised land, it will be according to, Kar Asher, it will 485 be consistent with to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, his sworn oath and promise, Sabahu, to you, La Otter, and to your fathers. Wa La Ab Otter, giving, Wa Nathan, bestowing, her to you, Hi La Otter. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:11. While the promised land is real, and indeed, Canaan became Israel as promised, it serves as a metaphor for heaven. It speaks of our return to the Garden of Eden, of an eternity camping out with God throughout the universe. Also, never lose sight of the fact that Chag Matsah is transitional. It is out of the way of man and into God's home. Moreover, the redemptive nature of unyeasted bread comes replete with Yahowah's stamp of approval. We have his promise on it. Still speaking explicitly about the Miqra of Matsah, and its benefit, which is God's willingness to lead us away from religious and political oppression and into his home and family, our Creator requested. So therefore, you should cross over and extend, you should continue along this linear path to gain possession while being led along the way through passing over, everything, Shirl, which is firstborn, Peter, which opens the womb, addressing the next generation, of the womb, Rechem, from the mother, from Rachem, to be compassionate and loving, merciful and affectionate, to approach, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah as guided by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. This includes, every firstborn, Shirl Peter, everything which opens the womb of, offspring, Sheger, progeny which comes out, of your domestic animals, Behema, livestock and herds, which exists as your way of remembering, Asher Haya La Hazakar, to 486 approach, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation as Eloah, Almighty God. Shemoth 13:12. Every firstborn, Shirl Peter, donkey, Chamor, domestic male is useful for carrying burdens, from chamots, to be oppressive, troublesome, and difficult and Shema, to boil in turmoil and ferment that which is foul, you should redeem and save, pardor, you should ransom and release, deliver and restore, kal imperfect, along with, bar, a lamb, say, an individual male sheep. But if you will not redeem and release it, lo pardor, if you are not willing to actually save and restore it, and consistently ransom and deliver it, kal imperfect, then you might as well drop it, araf, let go of it or break its neck because there is no hope of it living, kal perfect. Every firstborn child, shol bekar, every eldest son, among the sons, ben, of man, Adam, of the first man conceived in Yahweh's image with a neshama, conscience, you should redeem, deliver, and restore, pardor, you should ransom and release, actually liberate and save, and continually offer and return, kal imperfect. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:13. Yahweh is encouraging us to continue along the path he has delineated. He wants us to appreciate that it leads to living with him in his home as his children. Therefore, as we pass over and into the promised land, the beneficiaries of Pesach, Passover and Matzah, unyeasted bread become Yahweh's bikurim, firstborn children. God wants us to remember to raise our children to be his children. Symbolically, then, we can offer to pardor, redeem the orneriest, the ass, and the lovable, the lamb, of our animals, just as Daud, Yahweh's firstborn, has 487 pardor, redeemed and released the greatest and least of us from the best and worst of man's Mitsraym. In this regard, pardor is wonderful. It speaks of what we, ourselves, seek from God, to be rescued and redeemed, ransomed and delivered, liberated and saved, to be released from harm's way and restored within the relationship. Sparing a lamb from the slaughter or releasing a donkey from carrying our burdens, seems like an appropriate way to honor what father and son have done for us on Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. But if someone should think that letting go of something we covet is too high a price to have our relationship with God reconciled such that we become his bekar, firstborn, then we can drop the whole idea of the Miqra'ey. And should the root meaning of araf, which is to drop in the sense of letting go of something, be unjustified, then I suppose breaking its neck, in compliance with the religious translations, is another option. Release it or lose it. As for Yahowah, he would like every firstborn child among the sons of man to be pardor, redeemed and restored, ransomed and released, liberated and saved. Such is the purpose of Matzah. To this end, and recognizing that we learn through repetition, Yahowah said, so, when it occurs, it happens and comes to exist, that your child, Ben Otter, asks, shall, inquires about and questions, kal imperfect, in the future, mahar, saying, la ma, what is, this about, Joth. Say, ma, answer, to him or her, el-hu, by, in, the powerful and strong hand, Shosik Yod, the demonstrable and forceful, capable and firm influence, and with the intensely restorative, repairing, and 488 renewing ability, from Chazak, strong and prevailing, resolute steadfastness, of Yahowah, a transliteration of Yehovah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. He brought us out, withdrew, removed, and delivered us, Yatsanaknu, descended to serve by leading us, away from, min. Religious and political oppression, Mitsraym, the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, the authority figures in the places of coercive and cruelty where slaves are confined, restricted, and persecuted, and out of, min, the house, baith, the household, of slavery, ebed, bondage and forced servitude. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:14. One of the best reasons to study Yahweh's Torah is so that when our children ask us to explain something as vital as Jag Matzah, we are equipped to do so. We can tell them that the purpose of unyeasted bread is to free us from Mitsraym, religious and political oppression as well as ebed, bondage in works-based survival schemes. Mitsraym was both the name of this horrible place and a word that described what transpired therein. It depicts the crucibles of religious and political oppression, and describes the Mitsraym, the tyrants and despots behind governmental, military, and economic subjugation. The plural of Matzah, it speaks of those besieged during a time of testing and tribulation. From Chur, its oppressive nature is revealed, describing a place where many are bound and confined by an adversary, assaulted and afflicted, with conditions akin to being enclosed in a concentration camp. And it is from Chur that we see the connection between these conditions in this place and time and what is about to befall Jews during the time of Jacob's Chur, Israel's troubles. It is also instructive to note that miraf is a crucible, a word which embraces three related conditions. The first 489 is the most obvious, a vessel subject to fire used for refining metals, separating that which is desirable from the dross. This speaks of judgment, which is to separate fact from fiction, good from bad, that which is worthy from that which is not. Second, a crucible describes a severe test. It is our response, the choices we make under trying circumstances, which determines our fate. Under public pressure, do we acquiesce to the ways of man, or choose the ways of God? Do we flow with the tide of humanity or swim against it? Third, a crucible is a place or situation in which forces interact to cause or influence change in attitude, ability, or personal growth. When we are challenged in tough situations, we either capitulate and surrender with a woe-is-me attitude, or we aspire to triumph over our plight. God is offering us a way out of the mess we have created for ourselves, but to capitalize, we must first make the responsible decision to properly assess our situation, and the cause of it, and then properly consider God's offer. Also telling, crucible is from the Latin, crucibulum, which shares a common root with crucifigere, to crucify. While there is no crux, or cross, mentioned in Yahweh's word, there was a crucifixion on Passover. The death of Daud's body, as the Lamb of God on Passover, serves all who avail themselves of his sacrifice. Just as Yahweh led his family out of the crucibles of Egypt, Daud's sacrifice led us away from judgment by enduring the ultimate test and trial. And, when, Pharaoh, the flea, from phar'os, annoying insect and parasitic worm, an irritating and insignificant creature, was, higher, fiercely stubborn and cruel, harshly refusing, kasha, unyielding and oppressive, especially burdensome and obstinate, resisting and unwilling, to release us, la shalakanak set us free, Yahowah, a 490 transliteration of, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, took the lives of, harag, put to death, all, shirl. The firstborn males, Bekower, in, the land, Eres, realm, of the religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, of the despots and tyrants within the cauldrons of military and economic subjugation, of the authority figures in the place of coercive cruelty where slaves are confined and restricted by political persecution, considered foes, besieged, and assaulted as if inside a concentration camp. From men, the firstborn, Bekower of man, Adam, of mankind, to, Ad, and including, firstborn livestock, Bekower behema. Likewise, Alken, as a result, will offer a sacrifice, Zabak, I will prepare an animal for consumption, on behalf of, to, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our shalom, restoration, including all, shirl, firstborn, Peter, which opens to the next generation, of the womb, Rechem, from the mother, from Rachem, to be compassionate and loving, merciful and affectionate, to remember, Hazakah, to recall. Therefore, all of my firstborn sons, Shirl Bekower Ben-Eni, I will redeem, Pordor, I will ransom and restore, deliver and save, continually offer and return, Kalim perfect. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:15. I should have noticed it earlier because it is the very next word after Pharaoh. From God's perspective, the man who claimed to be divine was a phar'os, flea, an annoying insect and parasitic worm, nothing but an irritating and insignificant creature. Now, that's funny. As the description indicated, fleas can be annoying. This worm was fiercely stubborn and cruel. Having been obstinate and oppressive, Yahowah found a way to get his 491 attention. Even fleas value their young. But in all seriousness, the lesson here is that, while Pharaoh had no right to enslave, abuse, and murder God's people, Yahowah had every right to shorten the lives of those he had conceived. Let me explain by way of example. If you built a guest house and furnished it, and then upon finding a drug addict on the street corner, you offered him the opportunity to live in it rent-free, then he rapes your daughter and beats your son, abuses your spouse, and mocks you before your friends, all within the first 6 months. Would you be right or wrong to shorten his stay and boot him out? Would you have been generous and merciful or stingy and uncompassionate? It is also prudent to recognize that, to the degree we grieve our Maker's children, he will respond in kind. In all of my books and radio programs I have been consistent and forthright. I eschew violence, preferring words to weapons. But I make an exception when it comes to stopping someone from attacking and abusing loved ones. This approach seems consistent with Yahowah's response to the flea. The only reason for repeating this is that God wants us to learn this lesson, and capitalize upon his offer. And that is hard to do when so many are looking the other way. And this will exist, Wahaya, as a sign, La oath, as a symbol, an example and illustration, even as a metaphor and account to consider, before, concerning, your hand, Yod otter, your ability to achieve something worth holding onto, and your influence, and as a symbolic way of remembering, la totafoth, as a sign or mark to permeate as a memorial to remind and remember, to advance understanding between, bayan, for comprehension in the midst of, your eyes einota, your sight and perspective. 492 Indeed, ky, by way of, var, within, an influential and firm hand, chozik yod, a forceful and capable, intensely resolute and restorative, repairing and renewing, from chazak, strong and prevailing, dependable and steadfastness, hand, yod, source of authority, ability, and influence, Yahowah, Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, brought us out, Yatsa and Aknu, removed and withdrew, liberated by descending to serve, extending himself to bring us away, from, Mitsraym. The crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel persecution where the people were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and besieged, during a time of testing and tribulation, from to be bound and confined by an adversary, assaulted and shut up in the likes of a concentration camp, by those showing great hostility. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:16. Matsah, like so many things is both actual and allegorical. We should view it literally and symbolically. This historic iteration of the Miqra was also prophetic of its fulfillment, and as is the case with so many things in the Torah, the more we know, the better we understand, the longer, richer, and brighter our lives. Let us never forget that the first letter in Yahowah's name is a hand. God is dependably and steadfastly reaching down and out to us with a capable and influential hand. Speaking of God and his claims, according to the Qumran scroll 4 Keksad, some of what he revealed following what we label Exodus 13:16 was removed by Masorete rabbis. The omitted sentence reads, Then Moses and the children of Yisrael sang this song to Yahowah, and spoke, saying, I will sing to Yahowah for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his 493 rider, he has cast into the sea. It was time for a celebration, and to show one's appreciation. But the rabbis, in their crusade to make saying Yahowah's name a crime punishable by death, could not bear the thought that those who actually knew God, those who had been saved by him, shouted it out in song. In that we have been regaled with a narrative we should treasure, one which establishes the importance of Matsah and describes its connection with Bikurim. Let's ponder this summary of events. With these words I think that God is telling us that Bikurim naturally follows Matsah. He does not want us to hesitate, concerned that any vacillation will cause us to be left behind. While the Hebrews were in Mitsraym, Yahowah announced that he had invited them to a meeting, including a meal, which would transpire over the course of 3 days. They will listen, Wa Shama, to the sound of your voice, La Ka'ota. Then you and the elders, Wa Otta Wa Zarkan, of the children of Yisrael, Beni Yisrael, will go, to the king, El Melech, of the crucibles of oppression, Mitsraym, and say to him, Wa Ma El Hu, Yahowah, Yahowah, God, Elohim, of the Hebrews, Ibrahim, has scheduled a meeting and invited us to it, Kara Alanakyu. So now, therefore, Wa Otter, we implore you to please, allow us to walk away, Holok, on a 3-day path, Derek Shalaush Yaumim, into, Bar, the wilderness to ponder the word, Ha-Midbar. We will prepare a meal, Wa Zebach, to approach, La, Yahowah, Yahowah, our God, Elohim and Aknu. Shemoth, names, Exodus 3:18. This reference to a 3-day path we are being 494 invited to walk to approach Yahowah is repeated with a heightened sense of urgency in Shemoth, Exodus 5:3. Then they replied, Wa Ma, the God, Ha Elohim, of the Hebrews, Ha Ibri, has invited us to meet and has called us out, Kara Alanakyu. Now with a heightened sense of urgency, we want to walk, Holok, on a 3-day path, Derek Shalosh Yaum, into pondering the word, Vaha Midbar. Then we will prepare an animal for a feast as part of a sacrificial offering, Wazabak, to approach, La, Yahowah, Yahowah, our God, Elohim and Aknu. If not, he will intercede for us and there will be a catastrophe, Paga and Aknu, a plague of widespread death, Hadaber, with a sharp divide and ensuing conflict leading to Korib, our Baha Cherub. Shemoth, names, Exodus 5:3. These references to having been invited to walk along a 3-day path, inclusive of a sacrificial offering, to approach Yahowah, are revealing. Since we know that the Ibri were called out of Mitsraym by way of Pesach and Matzah, what is the Shalosh Yaum along the Derek if not Bikurim? The verbal root of Maha used within God's next statement warns us not to wait lest we be left behind. They baked, Wa-Afa, the dough, Eth-Ha-Batsik, which, Asher, they had brought out and withdrawn, Yatsa, from, Min, the crucibles of religious and governmental oppression, Mitsraym, as flat loaves which had been hastily prepared, Yuga. The bread was uncontentious matzah, because, there was no yeast added, lo chametz, as, they had been expelled, literally driven out, gerish, from, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel 495 persecution, Mitsraym, and they would not have prevailed, lacking the confidence to overcome the challenges to endure, lo yakol, if they had delayed, lingered, waited, or hesitated, as vacillating and dithering would have caused them to be left behind, la maha. Moreover, wa gam, they had not done anything to prepare, lo asar, food or provisions, cedar, for themselves, la hem. Shemoth, names, Exodus 12:39. Just as the Shabat is the most important day of the week, Matzah has been presented as the most important day on God's annual calendar, well beyond one of 52 Shabat. It is introduced as etzem, very substantial, essential, and foundational. Shemoth 12:41, for all eternity, it is a time to be shimrim, especially alert, holding an evening vigil to be withdrawn from religion and approach Yahowah. Shemoth 12:42, wouldn't the children of Yisrael emerging into the light of the next day serve as notice that they have become God's firstborn? Affirming that Matzah is the most glorious Shabat, Yahowah's family is encouraged to remember to proclaim the truth about Zakar, this unique day, which, to reveal the benefits of the relationship, and to lead along the correct path to get the most joy out of life. Asher, you were withdrawn and brought out, having been removed, Yatzah, from, the realm, Eres of the religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, out of, the house, Baith, of slavery, Ebed, by way of and along with, Bar, the resolutely powerful and unyielding, Chazak, hand, Yod, of Yahowah, who delivered you, removing you, Yatzah atom, from this, Minzay. Shemoth, Exodus, names 13-3. Those who do so are brought home based upon Yahowah's Shabat, promise. One thing leads to the other 496 as one verse to the next. And it will be, Wahaya, when, Yahowah, brings you to the land, Boata el Eres, of the Canaanite, which, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, he promised, Shabat, your fathers, La Abota, to give to you, La Nathan La Otter, a land flowing with milk and honey, Erezu Shalabwa Dabash, then you should expend the considerable energy and intensity to serve, Wa'abad, doing this work, Ethar Bodahar Joth, in this time of renewal, Vahar Hadesh Hazeh. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:5. What is more Bikurim than being brought into the promised land? And what is more Shabat than the Shabat, promise which lies at its heart? But should that be insufficient to convince us that Matzah is the ultimate expression of the Shabat, Yahowah adds fuel to the fire. 7. Shabat, days, Yam, you should consistently consume, akal, unyeasted bread, Matzah. And on, Wa, the seventh day, Wabaha Yom HaShabi, celebrate a festival feast, Shag, to approach, La, Yahowah. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:6. Matzah, is an amalgamation of everything the Shabat represents. It is a Chag, celebration of the Shabat, promise of Shabat. 7. So, let's do as Yahowah requested. Tell conspicuously and in a straightforward manner, Wa Nagad, your children, La Benota, about this specific and unique day, Vaha Yom HaHu, saying, La Ma, for the sake of the participants who benefit from this occasion, Ba Abiozeh, Yahowah, engaged to do this for me, Asala Eni, when 497 Bar I, Eni, came out and was removed, Yatzah, from, the crucibles of religious and political oppression, Mitsraym. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:8. Matzah is, therefore, the day we are encouraged to reflect upon the work God is doing on our behalf, further establishing Matzah as the ultimate expression of the Shabat. And it shall exist, Wahaya, on your behalf, La Otter, as, La, an awe-inspiring sign to communicate an essential truth, oath, for, Al, your influence and actions, your ability to make a difference, Yod Otter. And, Wa, it represents a memorial reminder and commemoration for retrospection, depicting a record worth recalling, La Zikaron, a maxim, proverb, symbol, and inheritance right, for comprehension between, Bayan, your eyes, providing an observant witness with a sense of perspective, Ein Otter. The purpose is so that, Laman, the Torah, teaching and guidance, Torah of Yahowah, may exist, higher, in your mouth and thus in your speech, Bar Peotter. Indeed, because, the powerful, strong, and resolute, Chazak, hand, Yod, of Yahowah, brought you out, removing and delivering you, Yatzah, from, the oppressive nature of religion and politics, Mitsraym. Shemoth, Exodus 13:9. We are to celebrate Matzah as we should observe the Shabat. Therefore, closely examine, carefully consider, and observe, Shema, this clearly communicated written prescription of what you should do in life to live, drawing near during this eternal witness to the appointed meeting time, 498 Jothla mode, 4, min, days upon days and forevermore, Yamim. Shemoth, Exodus 13:10. It is the day which brings us home and thus to Miqra'ey. Without interruption, we read, and, it shall come to exist, that when, Yahowah, brings you to, the land, of the Canaanite, it will be according to, his sworn oath and promise, Shabahu, to you, and to your fathers, giving, Nathan, her to you, Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:11. Then affirming that unyeasted bread leads directly to firstborn children, Yahowah reveals. So therefore, you should continue along this linear path to gain possession while being led along the way regarding, everything, Shirl, which is firstborn, Peter, of the womb of the mother, and which is compassionate, loving, and merciful, Rechem, to approach, Yahowah. This includes, every firstborn, Shirl Peter, offspring, Sheger, of your domestic animals, Behema, which exists as your way of remembering, Asher Hazakar, to approach, Yahowah. Every firstborn, Shirl Peter, donkey, representing the most stubborn, troubled, and burdensome individuals, Chamor, you should redeem and save, Pordor, along with, a lamb, the most well-natured, say, every firstborn child, Shirl Bakower, among the sons, Barben, of man, Adam, you should redeem, deliver, and restore, Otter Pordor. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:12-13. Since Yahowah took the time to explain this, anticipating that we would understand the purpose and 499 timing of these 3 days, let's continue to review his explanations as they have been presented to us. So, when it occurs, that your child, Ben Otter, asks, shall, in the future, Mahar, saying, Ma, what is, this about, Joth? Say, Ma, to him or her, El-Hu, the capable, restorative, and renewing hand, Chosik Yod, of Yahowah, we were brought out, as he withdrew, removed, and delivered us, Yatzer Naknu, away from, Min, religious and political oppression, Mitsraym, and out of, Min, the house, Vaith, of slavery where we were forced to work for others, Ebed. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:14. Reinforcing the life and death consequence of our choices regarding listening to Yahowah and celebrating Pesach and Matzah leading to Miqra'ey, God reveals. And, when, the flea that was Pharaoh was, fiercely stubborn and cruel, harshly refusing, Kasha, to release us and set us free, La Shalakanaknu, Yahowah, took the lives of, Harag, all, Shirl, the firstborn males, Bakower, in, the land, Eres of the religious and political oppressors, Mitsraym, from, Min, the firstborn, Bakower, of man, Adam, 2, Ad, firstborn livestock, Bakower Behema. Therefore, Al-Ken, any, will offer a sacrifice, Zabak, on behalf of, Yahowah, including all, Shirl, firstborn, Peter, of the womb, remembering and commemorating such loving compassion and mercy, Rechem Hazakar. Accordingly, all of my firstborn sons, Shirl Bakower Ben-Eni, I will redeem, Pordor. Shemoth, names, Exodus 13:15. The vital nature of Matzah, unyeasted bread in drawing us away from religion and politics, such that we 500 can be born into Yahowah's family is truly amazing. Before we investigate more of what Yahowah had to say about his second of 7 Miqra'ey, let's linger a moment longer and continue to review our Creator's preview of his upcoming festivals during the Yatzah, bringing out. The subject of unyeasted bread arose once again 10 chapters later in Shemoth, Exodus 23. This time, to emphasize just how essential a period of reflection is in relation to the redemptive purpose underlying the Miqra'ey, Yahowah inspired Moses to set their celebration within the context of a sabbatical year. 6 years, Shesh Shana, you should sow, Zerah, you should productively seed, your land, Eres Otter, and gather in, Asaph, harvest, collect, remove, and receive, the produce, ed-Daba, the harvested grain, produce and yield, revenue and income, thereof, high. Shemoth, Exodus 23:10. But on the 7th, Shabi, you should allow it to fall and lie fallow, Shemot high, release it and let it turn to stubble, scattering and dispersing it for the purpose of future renewal, 1 atash high, spreading it out and leaving it, so those in need who are willing to capitalize upon the opportunity and take responsibility, ebion, those who require it and will acquire the yield, eager for the freedom and independence it provides, from abar. Those willing to accept responsibility and consent to the opportunity, among your people, wa mota, of your family members and your relatives, may eat and be nourished, wa kal, may consume and be fed, kal perfect. Moreover, wa, leave the remainder, yether, allow 501 the rest, that which is left over from the abundance to remain behind, so that other living creatures, chaya, the animals, of the open fields and countryside, sarday, of the region, territory, and open environs, may feed on it, a kalhem, can eat it. Do the same, asar ken, engage and act in this same manner to produce similar results, with your vineyards and olive groves, la karem otter la zith otter. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:11. With these words, God is reinforcing an essential truth. His 6+1 plan, as it is presented throughout the mode Miqra'ey, nourishes those who are willing to capitalize upon the opportunity to restore and renew our lives. Further, harvesting grain is to be seen as symbolic of gleaning souls on Miqra'ey, just as vineyards and olive groves, which produce wine and oil, are symbolic of anointing those who are spared by Pesach and Matzah. As is the case with so much of Yahweh's advice, allowing the land to go fallow every 7 years, is responsible guidance. It allows the soil to recover and remain productive while reducing the number of pests who prey on the crop. This form of sustainable land management was not widely practiced nor understood until quite recently. It encourages natural nutrients like potassium and phosphorus to rise to the surface while increasing levels of carbon, nitrogen, and other organic matter while also improving the moisture-holding capacity of the soil. The result is much higher crop yields. Ebion is a marvelous word, addressing those with the inclination and will to exhibit personal responsibility and capitalize upon productive opportunities. The Ebion are accountable for their actions and will acquire what is needed provided the circumstances allow. They crave independence and freedom. Rather than becoming dependent upon welfare, the Ebion will go into fields 502 open to them, will harvest the food they require, and will then prepare it for their families. Their attitude and approach are something Yahweh appreciates. The Ebonim would come to play an important role for us as well. Without them, Daud's instruction on the Mount would be unknown, and likely, the Olivet Discourse as well. While the book of Matthew is largely fraudulent, the only reason that it now includes these two speeches is that the Ebionim were present, and they recorded them in Hebrew. They were responsible for preserving the Messiah's most compelling testimony so that, 50 years thereafter, the impostor named Matthew could incorporate them into the book bearing his name. His motivation for including such anti-Christian material is obvious in that, without both, Matthew is nothing more than the result of plagiarizing Mark and Luke. The Son of God even recognized them, and spoke favorably of them, revealing at the beginning of his instruction on the Mount that the Ebionim, errantly translated as meek, would inherit the earth. That said, the rabbis of the day hated these fellow Jews and sought to confiscate their texts according to the Talmud. Truth has always been counter to religion. From start to finish, Yahweh's redemptive plan is based upon this formula. 6 days, Sheshyam, you should engage and do, Asar, you should act, investing the energy to accomplish and produce, your work, Maseota, your pursuits, undertakings, businesses, customary practices, and deeds, accomplishing whatever you prefer, and on the 7th day, Wabaha Yom HaShabi, but on the day of promise, you should celebrate the Shabbat, actively engage in the promise of the 7th day written using the verbal form of the noun, so that, Laman, intending for those tasked with carrying your burdens 503 and your means of production, Sur Otter wa Chamor Otter, your beasts of burden, those who carry and bear cargo from one place to another for you, and your domesticated animals, may have a break, becoming refreshed and restored, Nuvak, enjoy the favorable circumstances associated with this spiritual alliance, from Ruach, spirit, and the son of your servant, Ben-Amar Otter, a child of your maid, mother, female servant, or caregiver. Even provider, and visitors, Wahajur, foreigners from different cultures and ethnicities without the inherited rights of citizenship who come from different places and races, may take a breather and be refreshed, Napash, be able to breathe, returning to life, recovering and retaining consciousness. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:12. The verb Shabbath and the noun Shabbat are indistinguishable in the Hebrew text. As such, Shabbath is the actionable approach to the Shabbat, making it the antithesis of a day of doing nothing. The most accurate definition would be, celebrate the Shabbat, acting upon the promise of the 7th day. It is distinguished from the previous 6 days in that our focus changes from engaging in our work at accomplishing whatever it is that we desire, to celebrating Yahweh's work, grateful for what he has promised to provide. Just as God is encouraging us to allow our fields to lie fallow for our benefit, and for the benefit of the Abion and Chair, he is asking us to give our beasts of burden and means of production a restorative break as well. This is not only good for them but also is good for us because it allows us to focus on the things of God at the same time. And in this regard, Nuvak speaks of becoming refreshed and restored spiritually. In fact, Nuvak is Ruwak with the Rosh replaced with a nun and thus a spiritual child conceived by a mother. The reference to setting a good example on the Shabbat 504 by giving visitors, from different cultures and ethnicities a breather to refresh their souls is sound advice. But what are we to make of Ben Amar Otter, a child of your maid, the offspring of your mother, a son of a female servant or your caregiver, even your provider? Why is Ben masculine and Amar feminine? Is God referencing our siblings or our servants, those who care for us and provide for us? Typically, the correct answer is inclusive, suggesting that we care and provide for ourselves on the Shabbat so that those who may cook for us or clean up after us can follow our example and serve a greater cause on this day. There is also the likelihood, especially following Nuvak, that the Amar is our spiritual mother, the Ruwak Kodesh, set-apart spirit, who nurtures us every Shabbat. She is our caregiver and provider. Her son may well be the Son of God, none other than Dowd, whose Mizmor we should sing this day to celebrate our relationship with Yah. If so, this is an affront to Rabbinic Judaism, especially Kabbalah, where wives are bathed and dressed as the Queen of Shabbat so that they can offer blessings for the family. There is a litany of rituals devoted to the religious rite of likening wives to the Queen of Heaven and Mother of God. Just for giggles, I googled the practices and their justifications this morning, a Shabbat, and was flabbergasted by how lame rabbis have become in their analysis. They even misrepresent Har Malakah, the maternal messenger of God, as the equivalent of Asherah, the Queen of Heaven and Mother of God, calling her Har Malakah Shabbat to infer that the goddess is the Queen of the Shabbat. Yahowah wants us to know that observing the Miqra of Matsah provides the benefits of the intended relationship. And in all things, Wabar Shirl, in the totality of, that benefit the relationship which, Asher, that show the 505 way to receive the greatest joy in life which, I have shared, Amar, I have communicated, spoken, promised, answered, intended, and avowed, with you, El Atom, the observant, Shema, closely examine and carefully consider them, remaining focused upon them. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:13 in part. Everything Yahowah conveyed through Moses in his Torah is food for the soul. Closely examine and carefully consider every nourishing bite. It has been served up for our edification, providing the benefits of the relationship on a divine platter. And while that is what we should do on the Shabbat, this is what we should avoid. And do not bring to mind by proclaiming in a memorable way, while lo zakar, do not memorialize, recalling information or events attributing honor to, nor humanize and proclaim in a way that inspires remembering and makes famous, hyphal imperfect, the name, Shem, the designation or reputation, of other, Acre, of another or different, gods, Elohim, neither let it be heard, lo shama, consistently proclaim for the purpose of perception, nephal imperfect on your mouth, al peota, as part of your communication and speech. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:13. There is nothing more offensive to Yahowah than the memorialization of false gods. Honoring them is an insult. Their names are an irritant. In typical religious fashion, religious Jews have taken this to mean that we cannot say or write God, and must pen God instead, ignorant of the realization that God is a title, not a name, and that Yahowah routinely uses the title Elohim, gods, to identify the fakes. Further, Yahowah speaks of false gods like Baal, the Lord, and of the previously mentioned, Asherah. Even the name Babel, Babylon, means with the Lord Bel. 506. If Yahowah wanted to tell us never to say the name of a false god, he would have had Moses write lo Amar, do not say, rather than lo zakar, do not memorialize. The instruction is to lo zakar, avoid proclaiming the name of another god in a memorable way and thereby honoring them, making them famous. If a person does what Yahowah has done, and condemns false gods by name, they are doing something beneficial and productive. To excoriate the notion that Jesus Christ, the Lord, or Allah is God is godly. The sabbatical year is consistent with the 7 days of creation, with the 7 instructions written on the second of 2 tablets, and with the 7 Miqra'ey. It is all related. As Albert Einstein so accurately stated, God does not roll dice. He has established a formula and he is following it. So should we. So, the question may be asked, since Yahowah's plan is obvious, why does his path home lie in direct opposition to religious teaching, and why are there so few people willing to address the discord between God and religion? Again, let's turn to Albert Einstein, who said, "Few people are capable of expressing with equanimity, balance and composure, opinions which differ from the prejudices of their social environment. Most people are even incapable of forming such opinions." Religions permeate almost every aspect of society and culture, making them difficult to remove from the minds and hearts of their hosts. This speaks to the first of the three statements written on the first of two tablets. God tells us that he is unique, that he has but one name, Yahowah, and that a god by any other name is false. Lord, or Baal, therefore, is not God. Allah is not God. Jesus Christ cannot be God, either, as that is a different name. In this context, our Heavenly Father introduced the 3 spring, 1 summer, and 3 fall Miqra'ey, 507 invitations to be called out and meet. 3. Shalaush, times you should be on your feet, regal, during a festival feast, Shagag, to party, celebrating and reveling, to approach me, La'ani, during the year, Bar Hashanah, as a time for renewal. Shemoth, Exodus 23:14. The Chag, celebration, Shag, the party, feast, festival, and opportunity to gather together to eat, sing, and dance, of Matsah, unyeasted bread, Matsah, uncultured flatbread, to become uncontentious by eliminating conflict and dispute, strife and quarrels, symbolic of removing the fungus of religion, from Matsats, to drain out and remove, you should observe, Shema, you should be aware of, focus upon, and attend to, closely examining and carefully considering. 7 days, Sheba Yaum, during the time of promise associated with 7, you should actually and consistently eat bread without the contentiousness of yeast, matzah, flatbread with the embittering culture of conflict removed by draining out the fungus of yeast, kal imperfect, in a manner consistent with the way, kar asher, according to the way to receive the benefits of the relationship and get the most joy out of life. I instructed you, Zawa Otter, I guided and directed you, to approach during the eternal witness to the appointed meetings, la mode, regarding the everlasting testimony during the scheduled appointments, a compound of Mao and Ed, of whom the eternal testimony is about and to whom the everlasting witness pertains, in the month, Hadesh, this time of a renewal of light on the moon's surface, from Chadash, to renew, restore, repair, and reaffirm, of Abib, Ha-Abib, the first month of the year during the beginning of spring when barley is still green and growing. Indeed, KY, for because, in it, Bahu, you were 508 removed and came forth, Yatsar, you were withdrawn and delivered, from, Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym, the cauldrons of cruel persecution where the people were confined and restricted by military and economic institutions, plural of Matsah, to be delineated as a foe and besieged, during a time of testing and tribulation, from Ch, to be bound and confined by an adversary, assaulted and shut up in the likes of a concentration camp, by those showing great hostility. And so no one should appear before me, while lo rapana any, shall be seen in my presence and behold my face, none shall be considered or regarded by me, empty or void, without a reason or cause, rekam, without what is expected based upon what has been fulfilled, without a marker or sign showing the reason for their presence, from rake, without effect, void and vain, with an unfilled space, worthless, useless, futile, even conceited, without a marker demonstrating the relationship and rug, empty and hungry. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:15. There is nothing random, or optional, about this. Matzah, the name of the invitation to be called out and meat of unyeasted bread, means more than bread without yeast. Matzah speaks of the rebellion that must be removed from our nature for us to live in the presence of God. Matzah addresses draining out the strife and quarrel of verbal contentiousness. These are all relational concepts that communicate the importance of Matzah, removing the embittered dissension, belligerent discord, hostile arguments, and wearisome debate that separate God from his wayward children. Religious and political men have created a self-serving competitive rivalry with God. Matzah is designed to eliminate this contention and conflicts, so that we can live 509 as part of God's family. This statement opens with God laying his redemptive plan out before us. 3 times each year we are to stand before Yahowah, first during Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim in the early spring, then on Shabu 7 weeks thereafter, and third, during the early fall when we attend Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah on the 1st, 10th, and 15th days of the 7th month. The first and last feature is a reaping of saved souls. God wants us regal, on our feet, and thus not bowing down or coward. He wants us chag, to be in a celebratory mood, happy to be in his presence. And he wants us Shema, to be observant, and thus not oblivious. For 7 days we are to consistently consume matzah, bread devoid of the embittering and contentious culture which is as invasive in religion as a fungus is in that which is rotting. And if we do so, consuming the matzah in a manner consistent with Yahowah's instructions during the mode, we will be considered withdrawn from Mitsraym, and as a result, we will not appear before God as an empty void or hungry. What follows is most always mistranslated and thus misunderstood. Rekam is usually translated as empty-handed, yet there is no reference to yod, meaning hand, in the word. God is not looking for us to bring him anything. Rekam was first used in Bersith, Genesis 37:24. That passage reads, "They threw him into a pit, but the pit was empty, Rekam, there was no water in it." Replace pit with soul and water with spirit and you will understand Yahowah's warning. Without his spirit, no one can exist in his presence. Yashar, Isaiah 29:8 makes this connection for us. Speaking of those who fight against Zion, the signs posted along the way, Yahowah says, the disheartened and broken, Kah, those deceived by false doctrines, 510 and the hungry, Rab, those who lack proper nourishment, dream of being restored to health, Shalom, however, behold, he who awakens and eats too late for the harvest, accalcates, eating in the hot season of summer, his soul, Nipesh, is empty, Rake, with a space which is unoccupied. Yahowah created man with a void, one perfectly suited to accept his spirit. Those who are not born from above by way of our spiritual mother will not enjoy the company of our heavenly Father. Empty vessels are vain, as in failed and arrogantly self-reliant. But beyond the allegorical, the reality remains. Chag Matzah is Yahowah's one and only means to remove Mitsraym, religion and politics from our souls. We avail ourselves of his provision, or we appear before God ill-equipped and unprepared to remain in his presence. Next, we find this word picture painted to help us understand Yahowah's desire to harvest souls. The path home is accessed by closely examining and carefully considering each word that paves the way. Pesach and Matzah yield Bikurim. You should observe, Shema, closely examine and carefully consider, the festival feast, Chag, celebration and party, of the harvest, Hakatsa, of the time of reaping that which was sown, of gathering in the crop, of Bikurim, firstborn children, Bikurim, first fruits, the initial gathering of the harvest, from Baka, to be firstborn, with your labors, Maseota, in conjunction with your work, undertakings, and pursuits, and of your attempts to accomplish something worthwhile, which, Asher, by way of making a connection and to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, you sow, Zerah, you plant the seeds expecting them to grow, throughout the region, Baha Sardeh, in the country where there is a sense of openness and in fields which were 511 cultivated, along with, Wah, the festival feast, Chag, the celebration, of the ingathering, Asif, gathering in the harvest, from Asif, to be removed, received, and rewarded, to be gathered and withdrawn. At the time of year to be withdrawn, Bar Yatzah Hashanah, to be removed and renewed at the proper time, when you gather in, Bar Asafota, when you receive and accept, that which is associated with your labors, Ethmaseota, that which pertains to your pursuits, undertakings, and accomplishments, out of the country where there is a sense of openness, Minhasardeh, from the fields in the region which were cultivated. Shemoth, Exodus 23:16. 3 times, Shalosh, in the conduct of one's life, Palm, demonstrating a pattern of behavior in the proper sequence, during the year, Var Hashanah, all, Shirl, everyone, of you should remember to, Zaka'ata, be seen, Ra, appear, be inspected, and be witnessed, before, Elpanah, in the presence of, Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher, existence. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23:17. This is the first time we have seen the name of the third of 7 Miqra'ey, Bikurim, firstborn children. Bikurim, the plural of Bakar is from Baka, meaning the first children who are born. In that it is the first of 2 harvests, Yahowah is speaking about reaping souls who have been born anew into his family. And while Bikurim is the first of 2 ingatherings foretold in the Miqra'ey, the second is Towrah. The Chag Bikurim was fulfilled concurrently with the reunification of Daud's Nipesh, soul with the Ruach Kodesh, set-apart spirit in the aftermath of Pesach and Matzah. The harvest associated with the Yom Towrah, better known as trumpets, is still on our horizon. It will transpire on Towrah, the first day of the 7th month, 512 sometime between 2026 and 2029. As a warning to those who rely exclusively upon the popular Strong's lexicon and concordance to verify these translations, their definition of Bikurim errantly associates this feast with the ritual of Pentecost. Bikurim precedes Shabuah by 7 sevens of days. You are welcome to disagree, but as I consider these words, I think that Yahowah wants us to reap what we sow. He would prefer that our efforts work in parallel with his. That is to say, that we should sow his seeds among those who are open and receptive. In this way, we can enlarge the harvest and show the way to the benefits of the relationship. While we all share the same inheritance, this is one case where the more souls we share it with, the more enriching the experience. The universe we are inheriting as children of the covenant is ginormous, and even bigger when we appreciate that it spreads out in 6 dimensions and is always expanding. The more individuals with shared interests we get to explore it with, the more we will enjoy the experience. Towrah, trumpets, the 5th of 7 invitations to be called out and meet, is the Chag, festival feast of the Asif, in gathering. On this day, the children of the covenant will be Asif, gathered together and harvested by God. After having shared his message to the best of our ability, which is the purpose of Towrah, the beneficiaries of Pesach, Matsah, Miqra'ey, and Shabat will be Asif, removed, received, and rewarded by our Heavenly Father. He is committed to Bar Yatzah HaShanah, withdrawing us at this time of year. It is yet another Yatzah from a God who glories in them. Towrah is defined by Eth our pursuits, undertakings, and accomplishments on behalf of the Miqra'ey, the Barith, the Torah, Yisrael, and Yahowah. Our mission is to plant seeds among those open 513 to them so as to enlarge the harvest. We have learned that all 7 Miqra'ey, invitations to be called out and meet with God, work in concert to achieve a common goal. Passover and unyeasted bread lead to firstborn children, to our souls being gathered in my God. In the spirit of understanding, please reconsider what we have just learned about the Miqra of Matsah serving as the living embodiment of the Shabat. Yahowah, in the midst of his discussion regarding the transition from Matsah to Miqra'ey, revealed, 6 years, Washesh Shana, you should sow Zerah, your land, Eth Otter, and gather in, Asaf, the produce, ed-Daba, thereof, high. Shemoth, 23:10. But on the 7th, Shabi, you should allow it to fall and lie fallow, freeing it, Shemot high, scattering and dispersing it for the purpose of future renewal, Natash high, so those in need who are willing to capitalize upon the opportunity and take responsibility, Ebiaun, among your people, Motter, may eat and be nourished, Kal. Moreover, leave the remainder, Yether, so that other living creatures, Chea, of the open fields and countryside, Sardeh, may feed on it, Akalhem. Do the same, Asarken, with your vineyards and olive groves, La Karem Otter La Zith Otter. Shemoth, 23:11. 6 days, Sheshyam, you should engage and do, Asar, your work, accomplishing whatever you prefer, Marsei Otter, and on the 7th, the day of promise, Wabaha Yom HaShabi, you should celebrate the Shabat, actively engaging in the promise of 7, Shabbath, so that, Laman, those tasked with carrying your burdens and your means of production, Sir Otter 514 Wachamor Otter, may have a break, becoming spiritually refreshed and restored, Nuvak, and the son of your servant, Benamar Otter. And visitors from different cultures and ethnicities without the inherited rights, Wahajur, may take a breather and be refreshed, Napash. Shemoth, 23:12. And in all things, Wabar Shurl, that benefit the relationship which, Asher, I have shared, Amar, with you, El Atom, be observant, Shema. Therefore, do not proclaim in a memorable way, Walo Zakar, the names, Shem, of other, Acre, gods, Elohim, neither let them be heard, Lo Shama, on your mouth, Al Peotter. Shemoth 23:13. 3. Shalaush, times you should be on your feet, regal, during a festival feast, Shagag, to approach me, La Eni, during the year, Bar HaShanah. Shemoth 23:14. The Chag, celebration, Shag, of Matsah, unyeasted bread, Ha-Matsah, you should observe, closely examining and carefully considering, Shema. 7 days, Sheba Yam, you should actually and consistently eat bread without the contentiousness of yeast, Matsah, in a manner consistent with the way to receive the benefits of the relationship, Ka Asher, as I instructed you, Zawa Otter, to approach during the eternal witness of the appointed meetings, Lamod, in the month, Hadesh, of Abib, the first month of the year during the beginning of spring when barley is still green and growing, Ha-Abib. Indeed, KY, in it, Vahu, you were removed and came forth, delivered and withdrawn, Yatzah, from, Mitsraym, the crucibles of political and religious oppression, Mitsraym. And so, no one should appear before me, while lo 515 Ra Pana Eni, empty or void, without a reason or cause, Rekam. Shemoth, Exodus 23:15. Tying all of this together for us, and in his very next statement, Yahowah instructs, you should observe, Shema, the festival feast, Chag, of the harvest, of reaping what was sown and is ready to be gathered in, Hakatzah, of Miqra'ey, firstborn children, Miqra'ey, of your undertakings and pursuits, Marsei Otter, which, By way of making a connection and to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, you sow, expecting these seeds to take root and grow, Zerah, throughout the region, Wa Ha-Sadeh, along with, Wa, the festival feast, Chag, the celebration, of the ingathering, of being received and rewarded, Asif, at the time of year to be withdrawn, restored and renewed, Bar Yatzah Ha-Shana, when you gather in, receive and accept, Bar Asafota, that which is associated with your actions and what you choose to pursue, Eth Maseota, in conjunction with the realm where there is a sense of openness, Min Ha-Sadeh. Shemoth, 23:16. 3 times, Shalosh, in the conduct of one's life, demonstrating a pattern of behavior in the proper sequence, Paim, during the year, Var Ha-Shana, all, Shirl, of you should remember too, Zakar Otter, Visin, Ra, before, Elkanah, Yahowah, Yahowah. Shemoth, Exodus 23:17. We come to know by being observant. We come to understand by making connections. And we remember through repetition. Consider this review of Matsah leading to Bikurim a prime example.